Like it never stopped. Like it's the same thing. I know you're gonna say this is the past and it had changed. It had never changed. It will never change unless you start to read something rather than just repeating bullshit like the Jews are controlling us. Nobody is controlling. What the Jews had nothing to do with communism, with socialism, with the Soviet Union, with the China.
People are demonstrating with passion. These ignorant demonstrators. Who are they demonstrating for? For these murderers, these rapists, these mass killers. This is a reflection of a deep rot that has pervaded the intellectual hub of free societies.
So today we're going to do this video about free speech. So there is a lot of, people who claim that, especially this alternative media, these so-called fake, experts and all that, claiming that somehow this speech is the region or the influence of this one person. There was also other videos, in Congress and all that, and people say, well, because they're lobbying and all that. See, like you have to look at the context, it's quite important, and Westerners are allergic to context. And so we are going back in history and looking at the history of this so-called free speech. Now, let's continue the video and we will go.
Vilification of Israel, the Jewish people, and Western values has been propagated by a systemic alliance
Western values.
The ultra-progressive left and radical Islam. It must be resolutely fought by civilized societies to safeguard their future. This is why we must all commend President Trump's decisive actions against anti-Semitism, and we must pressure other governments to do the same.
Now, so somehow this is what is called like influencing and all that. So we are going to look at the evidence, because I'm very skeptical. Like I like to formulate my own thoughts. Now, look at this. So this is the Sedition and Espionage Acts were designed to quash this dissent during World War I. But this is something in 1917. So there was opposition at home by those who wanted America to remain neutral in the European conflict. And so what they did, they squashed dissent. So so basically that act in 1918 that criminalized any disloyal, profane, I don't know what's the word there, abusive language about the US government or military. Exactly what they're doing right now. And I understand people are going to say, that this is in the past. No, it's not the past. This is a straight line. This is the continuity of the same behavior. I don't know if you got some type of amnesia or something like that, but to me, it seems like you live in a different planet. Anyway, that's just one example. Let's move to this. This is also in the Alien and Sedition Act, the same thing we read about. And this is in 1798. So it says a U.S. peace treaty with Britain angers France, which strike back by seizing U.S. ships. On the verge of war, the Congress enacted 4 bills, collectively known as the Alien and Sedition Act, to silence pro-French sentiment in the U.S. So as you can see, there's no free speech. See, free speech, it means you can basically say whatever you want, no matter what kind of impact it's going to have. But the moment it starts to have an impact on the private sector or foreign policy or something like that, all of a sudden they abandon that. This is why I don't believe you can be mad at other countries and say, oh, well, they are dictatorships or they're chaotic or tyrannical. But at least they know it's chaotic, it's tyrannical. But somehow Americans, it's like, I mean, with this, that exceptionalism and that whatever social engineering they have done to the American people, where it's like, y'all just believe just because you got a document saying something, it doesn't mean it's enforced. It doesn't mean they're gonna respect it. I mean, they shut down the entire economy just 4 years ago. You couldn't do anything about it. They made up the whole thing. So it's like, it's not a right if it's just in a document. It doesn't mean anything, right? Now, this is another case in Shenek versus United States, 1919. What does it say? It says, during World War I, Congress passed the Espionage Act, the same thing we just read about, which made it a crime to convey information intended to interfere with the war effort. The act made it a crime to convey information intended to interfere with the war effort. The same thing they're doing right now. Why can't you just see the pattern? Why can't you just admit that they have done it in the past, they're doing it right now, and they will do it tomorrow because you live in an alternative universe? You believe that because you got a document that says something that somehow they're gonna respect it. I mean, they have declared, they took it upon themselves to have this universal human right declaration. And every year, every decade, they do not conform to it. Basically, they have to bully everybody to respect human rights. But there's no human rights in their country somehow, or when they interfere with other countries, all the rights and all that declaration, the Geneva Convention, doesn't mean a damn thing. Well, at least I can see it. Like I said in the beginning, maybe you got some type of amnesia where you forget. So this is a robust free speech protection in a different case, Abrams versus United States. So the Supreme Court itself in future decades just says, so basically this is what it says. It says no free speech. That's what it says. Okay, let's read another article. This is when America's most prominent socialist was jailed for speaking out against World War. So if you're socialist, communist, you're anti-war, you're anti-genocide, anything that they don't like, all of a sudden there's no free speech. So it's like, I mean, it's absurd, it's really absurd. So at 1,200 people watched. A Debs stepped in front of the wooden bandstand, nearly bald. He wore a tweed. Okay, we don't need the description. The working class has never yet had a voice in declaring war. If war is right, let it be declared by the people. You who have your lives to lose. Of course, they don't want that. They want you to die, basically. And you can say anything about it. So there's a lot of description in this article, I'm not trying to read. I'm just going through the history. So this is what the guy said. I would never go to war for a capitalist government. Let's look at this. What is that? This is Smith's Act, trial of Communist Party leaders. So this trial of the Communist Party leader in New York City from 1949 to 1958 were the result of the U.S. federal government prosecution in the post-war period and during the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. Leaders of the Communist Party of the United States were accused of violating the Smith Act, a statute that prohibited advocating violent overthrow of the government. And so that's why they give you the firearms. They know that you're just going to point them at the wrong direction. And that's why you have them. The defendants argued that they advocated for a peaceful transition to socialism. No, the capitalists, especially those greedy capitalists, would never allow you to discuss anything. I mean, even criticizing capitalism, you can only do it in the boundaries that they set up. Once you step outside of those boundaries, all of a sudden you're communist. You should go to China. You should go to live in Russia, right? So you can even criticize the system, and you can say, well, I've seen people criticize capitalism. But what happened? No impact. They're just talking, right? But the moment you start to disrupt, just like when the Mahmoud Khalil, when they detained him, people say, well, it's because of pro-Palestine. It wasn't pro-Palestine. If you read the goals that were pushed by his group, they were actually advocating for the divestment of the funds by the university, by the Columbia University. They want the university to stop funding the companies, and that's why they arrested him. Because the private sector is affected. There's going to be an impact. Nobody can influence foreign policy. They're going to do what they're going to do. Like one guy or people with signs and flags and chanting on the street is not going to change anything. But the goal of the group, that was the objective. They want the university to stop funding those weapons manufacturers, etc. And that has an impact. And the private sector is the one who own you. They're the one who control you. They're the one who are making the rules, the regulation, the laws. See, Y'all thinking the president and all that. The president ain't got no power in that country because it's not a democracy. You have never seen democracy in your entire life. So this is another article. Does the Smith Act threaten our liberty, American law, and the Communist Party? So, in brief, the Smith Act makes it unlawful for any person to advocate the overthrow of the government by force or violence. We already read that. So this is just a repetition of what we just saw. Look at this. The New York Times versus the United States. This is the Pentagon Papers case in 1971. Like, it never stopped. Like, it's the same thing. I know you're going to say this is the past and it had changed. It had never changed. It will never change unless you start to read something rather than just repeating bullshit like the Jews are controlling us. Nobody is controlling. What the Jews had nothing to do with communism, with socialism, with the Soviet Union, with the China. Anyway, it says, paramount among the responsibility of a free press is the duty to prevent any part of the government, etc. So the summary, it says the New York Times and the Washington Post both gained access to the so-called Pentagon paper, a classified Defense Department study that examined the history of the U.S. involvement in Vietnam. And so Daniel was employed by the Rand Corporation and he worked on the report. Eventually, he photographed thousands of pages of the report and sent it to the New York Times. So the Times began publishing it, arguing that these news reports endangered national security. There is no national security when it comes to just publication of documents. And if it's national security, are the people allowed to know what's going on? Because the entire thing was a mess. Why are you going to Vietnam? The Vietnamese didn't done anything to you. You wanted to contain communism, but that's not your job. Why are you acting like the police? Right? 2 million people dead. They had the plan. They had those papers. They got a bunch of information. It's gonna expose the savagery of that government, and they didn't like it. So as you can see, no free speech. Discredit, disrupt, and destroy. FBI record acquired by the library revealed violent surveillance of black leaders, civil rights organization. And Malcolm X. This is Malcolm X. They killed him. So behind the scene, Hoover, Federal Bureau of Investigation was keep watching. In 1967, the FBI quietly unleashed a covert surveillance operation targeting subversive civil rights group and black leader. So black people, the people who have been the longest in that country, advocating for just equality of the races. And what they do, they harass them, survey them. And you're talking about like free speech. Well, what is free speech? What is the Zionism here? Where is the Jews' involvement in this? So do you tell me the Jews didn't want the black people to gain some economic power, some representation in Congress and the government? It was the Jews all along. And this is why I think it's disturbing. So one of the biggest lessons contained in the document is abundantly clear. Whatever you do, don't let them think you're a communist. So basically they infiltrated that movement and start killing motherfuckers left and right. Anyway, that's just like too many examples. The history of violent opposition to black political participation. Look, burning shit to the ground. On Saturday morning, 1955, Mr. Smith was home at their farm and his wife, Annie, when someone told them that the county courthouse. The sheriff heard the shot. An ICP investigator determined Mr. had walked into a trap. A half century later, a witness told the FBI that 3 men had delivered whiskey to someone who knew Smith and was instrumental. So basically, they will track you down. They go wherever you stay, listen to your phone calls, wiretapping, harassment, everything. They would do anything. Put you in jail for no reason, no due process, send you to Guantanamo Bay, stay there for 20 years, torture. They will do anything. Like I said, I like to formulate my own thoughts. You, on the other hand, just want to go with an easy type of answer. Like Netanyahu is controlling us. When you have hundreds of years of the same behavior by the same people, and those are white, and those are Christians, right? So don't tell me something about. So they attack up to 99 incoming gunshots and one only fired by the Panthers. Those are still the black activists. Also claimed the life of Panther Mark Clark in what later emerged that was a meticulous planned FBI-backed operation. 25 days later, on 29 December 1969, Aqua and Jerry, then Deborah Johnson, gave birth to a baby boy. Okay, we don't care about that. Fred Hampton, remember this guy? They shoot him in his bed. Identified as a chairman in his own right, not on the Black Panther Party, but the Panther Club, the children of the movement, as he puts. I'm a Black Panther. So the Guardian was talking to 9 Panther Club across the. So they shot him. You know, we can't go through everything because this is just too much, and this is why I find it like hilarious. Okay, that's a very very long article. The Supreme Court ruled to allow American flag burning. So before it wasn't allowed. In the controversial Texas versus Johnson, the court voted 5-4 in favor of Gregory Lee Johnson. The protester who had burned the flag, Johnson action, the majority argued, were symbolic speech, political in nature, and could be expressed even at the expense of our national symbol and to the affront of those who disagree with him. Somebody said here, I cannot agree that the First Amendment invalidate the act of Congress and the laws of 48 out of the 50 states which make criminal the public burning of the flag. So, I mean, there's a lot of control. I mean, my point is there's just too much laws, too much legislation. And it's like you can only stay in certain boundaries, specific boundaries that they set up. Like I said, when you cross it, it's like, when does free speech cross the line into breaking the US anti-terrorism law? So the Palestinian resistance and the Lebanese resistance are not engaging in terrorism, Cates told NBC. They're engaged in the national liberation struggle. The US Treasury official sanctioned her organization 2 weeks ago and declared it a sham charity, alleging that it was funneling money to a second lesser known US designated terrorist organization. So whenever they don't like what you say, it's called terrorist organization. So the Canadian government declared Samidun a terrorist entity, just like I said. Germany banned the organization last November. Republican member of Congress and several Jewish groups have petitioned the Justice Department, the FBI, and other federal agencies to crack down on protest groups that openly praise terrorist organizations. So all they have to do is basically give it that classification, right? And then you can no longer speak about it. The long online shadow of the material support law. This is a huge article. I don't think we can read that. How the Supreme Court ruling a law meant to curb support for foreign terrorist group has impacted our own domestic political discourse. I mean, this isn't just an ongoing. This is in 2008. For example, YouTube responded to a letter from Senator that urged the platform to remove all videos mentioning or featuring Islamic terrorist organization by politely declining the request, stating that YouTube encouraged free speech. Oh, there's a lot of shadow banning. I mean, they even banned Trump from Twitter, and it's like, you're talking about like free speech, and I'm like, wow, dude, how can you be that stupid? So Assange, remember this guy, Julian Assange? You know, also Edward Snowden. He's hiding in Russia, right? You call him a traitor, whatever. You know, I don't care what you think about that thing, but like, this guy exposed the war crimes in Iraq. Remember that video? It was a shocking video, shooting a journalist because they got like a camera, right? And then they hide in a van, and then you shoot the van. And there was like kids. There were like 3 kids in that video. That was sad. That was fucking shocking. The video of that this guy exposed. And so that's the story. You know, we're not gonna go through the article, but you know what happened to him. They're like accusing him of like national security threat and all that. So you know, this is the what I think. If you know, to me, like the entire thing about some guys or some group or some lobbying group, China spend more than APEC, right? I mean, lobbying it's really not that powerful, you know. It doesn't actually change. I think that's just complicity, you know. This is what I believe, you know. Because when I look at the fact in when you're saying they're controlling, you mean they're just good people, right? They're just nice and they respect the law and they respect all the constitution and all that. And somehow these nefarious Jews are controlling them. This is what you like in that statement. You are also assuming that they're good guys, but no, they're not good. They have never been good. They have never respected the law. They have never respected human rights. And so that's all I have to say. If you have something to add, you can leave it in the comment section and like, subscribe, and share, etc. And see you next time.